fascinating, though.
Yeah, I think people would be interested in your love life, Jennifer Friend.
No.
Breaking hearts, fewer hearts.
Breaking hearts. Yes, it is Monday, August 18th. It is 10 a.m. Thank you for joining the Solid Ground live stream. Let's see. I want to make sure we are. Yep, we're live. Okay. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm speaking with Jennifer Friend, Deborah Knox, and Christine Siefenwalk. We are missing our friend Jenny Holland today. She couldn't be here, but we'll hopefully see her next Monday. And yeah, so much to talk about. One of the things we should and will enjoy talking about a little bit today is the interview that's kind of been doing a lot of the rounds between Benjamin Boyce and Danny. I can't remember her last name. What's the Dr. Danny's last name?
Something with an S.
Yeah, it starts with an S. That's how she has her socials, Dr. Danny S. And perhaps I'll be able to dig that up in a moment. But that is interesting. She talks about manipulative reproductive suppression. She has a theory that women are doing this to other women, and that's kind of at the root of wokeness. So we'll get into that a little bit. And Deborah also has some updates from some of the New York stuff that's going on, the Democratic Socialists taking over New York, maybe, and hear a little bit about that. Deborah, do you want to start us off with the introduction to Solid Ground?
Yes, and I still didn't memorize it. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as medical mandates in their workplace, university, children's schools, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join our peer support group for $10 a month or join our forum on locals for $5 a month. To find out more, visit Solid Ground Substack for the peer support groups and Solid Ground Locals for our forum. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Thanks very much. Yes, it is a great thing. Our groups are fantastic. They're so much fun, and you're all welcome to join us if that's something that would interest you. They're not streamed, they're not recorded. They're just people getting to talk with each other and get to know each other and kind of address some of these things that are going on in all of our lives as we figure out what the heck our world is doing. Before we get into the female intra-sexual competition topic, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on in New York and what you went to a rally yesterday?
I'm talking particularly, I was curious. So I don't know if you've heard of Brandon Straka. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Straka. Brandon Straka. Yeah. He went to the walk away.
Hashtag walk away. Yeah, and he left the Democrat, did a big announcement, and then he's had a lot of other people follow on. They often do these videos. This is why I walked away. And so he has decided that this whole, Mondami running in New York is a bad idea. And so he's putting a lot of time and energy into trying to stop it. And so he had a rally a couple weeks ago. I didn't go, but I thought I wanted to see what he was doing. So I went down to see what he was up to. And he had a table and a couple of volunteers. And his main angle is basically, you probably can't see this, but he's basically like anti-socialist. He's the lie of democratic socialism. So he's not even I got to talk to him a bit. I'm like, is he endorsing anybody? He's not actually endorsing anyone. He's just telling people, don't vote for Mondami. I did learn that from one of his volunteers that he prefers Sliwa, but doesn't think he'll win. Will probably vote for Cuomo. But anyway, he did. I mean, I think it's funny. His materials use the same colors as Mondami's campaign. It's interesting, but he takes on every one of these elements, like the free buses, the rent freeze, the grocery stores, and he has like the promise and the lie. So I think, he's really trying to inform people, but most of the volunteers are all out there talking to people, and they're all just going socialism bad. Like that's pretty much how they're going at it. So it was just interesting to see. They had some very good signage. I'll just read some of them. Like one said, socialism destroys Black wealth before it's even built. Or defund the police. Okay, next time you need help, call a crackhead. Or sorry, there's another one. There's another one that's really good too because Jews, please wake up and walk away. The left are not your friends. And then, there's one. It was Black, LGBT, Brown, women, Gen Z will not be pawns for leftist agendas. So there was interesting messaging. But I don't know how much effect he's going to have because I talked to him. He has like maybe only 400 volunteers at this point. And Mandami yesterday had 15 groups going out to canvass all over the city. I'm like, when are you going to get it going to have people canvassing? So I don't really know. The volunteers look like, I don't know all of them, but they were mostly women that looked like over 60 who were women. And one of them I spoke to, she works in a university and she's not an academic. And she said she had it because at where she works, she was expected to speak negatively about Trump all the time. And if you didn't voice your opinion, like that was a problem. And she was one of these people that thinks, well, there's some good things he did, like, and so now they're kind of giving her the cold shoulder. And she said, you know what, this is making me right wing, like how these people are treating me. And so that was basically it. I don't know how much they're going to possibly be able to do. I did wonder if, he was getting names and addresses. I did wonder if he's thinking about running for office in New York at some point, and he's kind of gathering attention for that. But the one other thing was funny. I walked over to Whole Foods after that, and outside Whole Foods, people are protesting because Jeff Bezos owns Amazon and owns Whole Foods, and Jeff Bezos equals contact with Trump. Therefore, Whole Foods is bad because Trump. And so they're telling people don't shop at Whole Foods. I don't think that stopped anybody. So that's just a little bit from the. The one other thing they were doing was they had a petition so that non-citizens would not be allowed to vote. And so that was the other thing they were up to. So I can't say it looks like they're going to be able to do a lot. I do think it's interesting that there's somebody who's out there just really saying, hey, people, let me tell you about socialism, like do a little education. But it doesn't seem like he has the manpower to do very much. That's my report.
Wow, that's really interesting. I wasn't a fan of Amazon buying Whole Foods, but to come around and protest it now as some kind of Trump adjacent thing, that's kind of bizarre. You were going to say something else, Deborah.
One other part of the story, I forgot about this part. There was one gentleman who had gone up to him and said, I have a podcast. Do you want to be on my podcast? So later I went to the podcaster and I was like, oh, what's your podcast? And he said, well, I really try to bring people together to have civil conversation. I'm kind of moderate. I like to kind of have both sides. He goes, and I do it in drag because I'm a drag queen. And it was just really interesting. Like, and he said, I get heat from the right and the left for doing it. And then he said, well, maybe do you want to be on my show? And I was kind of like, I just didn't, I thought this just seems like you're just putting yourself up to be like attacked, so I sort of wriggled out of there. But it was just, it was the juxtaposition. It was just very interesting to have this extremely moderate person who likes civil conversation and do it on all sides and, likes to do it as a drag queen. That was just an interesting detail of my afternoon.
Sounds intentionally provocative, which is, I don't know.
Well, it's funny. He goes, I said, well, did you decide to do it to make, did you decide to do it to make a point? Like that was going to add? And he's like, well, no, I've just been this character all along. And so, I mean, I don't know. I just thought, oh, New York, it's so funny, like the mashups of things. I'm sorry, there's a bad noise here. I'm going to turn my thing off.
Oh, here, I'll silence your, okay, there, she got it. Okay. Woo. The alarm tone of the day. Yeah, thanks for the updates, Deborah. It is kind of interesting. There's Area Hermit Woman, I like that name, says, my husband quit a fantastic health food store when Whole Foods bought it. Poor morale. They literally told employees, drink our lemonade. Interesting. Was that before or after Amazon bought Whole Foods? I'm wondering. Yeah, I wonder if if Brandon and his campaign will make any difference. It's so discouraging to continue to see these progressive politicians getting in. I mean, there's just a lot of passion behind that movement, a lot of anger. There's so much. They've really kind of effectively harvested rage among their their, I guess, their voting bloc, it seems.
Although I will say, Mondami has an interesting style. I mean, he is saying people, let's make things affordable. He does have this happy warrior like fun. I think he's starting to go a bit negative on his opponents, which I don't know if he'll carry it off well, because I think people have sort of liked him because he's like, hey, he's hanging out at a halal truck. He's, he has this sort of, yeah, hi, bouncy castle, kind of vibe. And so I don't know like how he'll do if he goes negative, or he'll talk about, let's make things affordable and dignity. He doesn't tend to go so much for the, like those horrible, I mean, he'll talk about it a little bit, but I think he's been trying to be like this positive vibe guy. So I don't know how it'll hold up.
Interesting. Well, maybe a rough segue, but did anybody catch the interview from last week that Benjamin did with Dr. Danny, and I looked her name up, I think it's Sulikowski. She is a psychologist of some stripe or other, maybe an evolutionary psychologist or a social psychologist, who is, I believe, Australian, and has this theory that what's happening right now with our culture, with woke, or whatever you want to label this sort of cultural breakdown moment that we all feel like we're in, is sort of a cyclical process. She thinks that when a culture or a society is on its way up, it's due to masculine influences, and I think she's really into the concept of reproductive suppression. So masculine intra-sexual competition builds societies, and then when they reach a certain, I don't know if it's population density or structural level where there's not as much growth to be built onto, they begin to degrade because of female influences and female reproductive, as she says, manipulative reproductive suppression. And so that's her theory. Right now we're in a moment when basically women are manipulating men and women in order to drive population rates down. So I hope I'm doing her argument justice. I know that's a real broad overview, but Deborah, you listened to most of that conversation, or some of it anyway. Do you believe that does a good job representing her argument?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I listened to the first 2/3. There was, because there were a couple of threads. One was the cyclical nature of it, and I frankly wanted her to mention when else it happened, because I don't know. It could be that that's the case, right? But I would have loved to say, well, at this empire, this is the place where it turned. So I don't have the evidence, but that was a big point of it. And I'm just trying to think what other. I think that really kind of covers it. I had like my various objections to it, but I think that really is the essence of all that. And and I think frankly, I'll just say Benjamin actually was still holding up this thing of like, no, let's just not like keep women in the kitchen forever. So he was sort of like, well, what if they have the babies first and then they have a career later? It much as one might think, where could this conversation go when someone's kind of painting this thing of like, women bad kind of thing. The solutions section, which was probably the latter half, like, what do we do? I think I was really going along with like a lot of the thoughts and discussion there.
Yeah, Olivia Maynard really doesn't like this theory. Olivia says this is ancient aliens level of discourse. Yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Well, what are the
Lola
examples,
says,
though, of...
I feel like we all have wacky theories. Yeah.
But what are the
Jennifer,
examples of how are women suppressing the reproduction of other women, though? So I get that's the theory, but how?
I would agree with Deborah
ways?
that she didn't really give any evidence of that. She pointed at things like the body positivity movement, where and this idea that women the thing that she doesn't really, she doesn't tie her case together by pointing at which women are doing this. Give us an example of which female dominated media companies or which rich, powerful women there are, because that's kind of her theory, is that that women reach a certain level of success and they start trying to manipulate other women. And that it's women encouraging like a fat positivity, or when models were very thin, that was women encouraging women to have unhealthy thin bodies, because it would result in other women having fewer babies, so that the powerful woman and her ilk could have more babies and be responsible for more genetic, contribution to future societies. I felt like it was a real stretch to point this blame at women. I couldn't really see where she was getting that part of her argument. There is female intra-sexual competition. There's mate poaching is a big part of that. There's ways that women undermine other women, but I just don't see how she is building a case that the population control mechanisms that have been in place are a female-centric thing. I mean, that you could point, I think you say that this is a human thing, and most of the proponents of population control seem to be male. So I'm just not sure where that's coming from. So she never really tied that part of the thing together. But it's very, very popular. That video has gotten a lot of traction, and there's lots of people commenting on it. And I suspect that that's because there's a lot of appetite right now for the man versus woman discourse. That there's a lot of desire for us to point fingers at one another right now.
Interesting. But I think that, men cooperate and compete with other men, and I think women cooperate and compete with other women. I just think this is part of the human condition, essentially.
Yeah, James,
I think she was making it though male competition was on net better because it builds civilization or something. Like, was that? I mean, it seemed sort of simplistic, but was that? What do you think, Leslie? She was sort of saying they do compete, but look what they end up achieving through that competition.
Well, women, if her argument is that women are competing for partners, when women do gain partners, they also procreate. So,
right.
That's the win.
A lot of my problem with the theory is that it's all post hoc. When you have these evolutionary breakdowns, well, this is why, and then this, and then that. It's really easy to tie things together after the fact. But like you said, Deborah, I would have liked to have heard, where are some other points in history where you saw this happening, and why do you believe that this is the correct theory, and how do we draw a parallel between that and now? And I don't feel like she really did that. She did have some criticisms of female social behavior. One of the things she talked about was the idea of frenemies, and James from Bahia just said, explain frenemies. So does one of you have an explanation for frenemies? This is kind of a trendy young people word, as far as I know. What's a frenemy? I don't have any frenemies. I don't know what that really means. I think it seems like it means somebody that you are socially cordial to, but you don't trust. Maybe.
Yeah, you might even be friends with them and you won't trust them. It's almost like keep your enemies close type of thing, I think. I mean, the first time I heard that phrase was on Sex and the City, like 15, 20 years ago. So I don't have any frenemies of my own, but I think that's somewhat of the premise.
Yeah, that was one of her things, was that women have frenemies.
Yes.
Every woman has has frenemies, and so that's kind of one of the ways that women are manipulative and devious, is that they'll have these frenemies.
Men have them too. The Oxford Dictionary says it's a person with whom one is friendly despite a fundamental dislike or rivalry. And men, absolutely. How do you not occasionally have a frenemy in the workplace where one has to be cordial and behave in a socially appropriate manner, but maybe you don't like that person? Everybody has, that crop up at some point in their life.
Yeah, it's just and somebody that you don't have your confrontation doesn't come to a head and it stays sort of below the surface, maybe. I don't know.
This is a lot of, I don't know. It's a lot of, it sounds like it's a lot of just negativity and blaming directed at women, but then saying at the same time, oh, see, women are doing all these bad things. But I don't know, maybe that's a massive case of projection because that's how she feels about women. She has these negative thoughts and beliefs about who we are, which it can in and of itself be a kind of, I don't know, competitive.
Well, and here James from Bahia, thank you. James is putting out the case for these kinds of like negative female social stereotypes. He puts in quotes, cut your hair shorter. And that's really interesting. I do think that women are competitive in terms of attractiveness with their friends, and they want to be the one who's noticed. And so there is that trope that goes around once in a while where the hairdresser tries to talk the pretty girl into getting a shorter haircut, and then gives her lots of compliments. I just cut my hair, so this is apropos, I suppose. But I was 31, 32 years old, and I was, cute and fit, and I had really long hair, and I cut it all off to do a little pixie cut. It was the shortest haircut I've ever had. I mean, it was like really a pixie cut. And I thought it was very cute for about a week. And then I wanted my hair back. So I had haircut regret. But what was really striking to me was that right after I cut my hair, women were so friendly to me. Like everywhere I went, women were very friendly. And what I realized was that when you're walking around and you're kind of sexy looking or you look really attractive, that is threatening to a lot of other women. It's just women read a pretty girl. And tell me if you guys agree or disagree with me on this. But I think that women, especially women who are also in the mating and dating market or trying to make themselves appear attractive, if that's important to them, read another pretty girl as a bit of a threat. Men read a pretty girl as fun. So tell me if I'm wrong. I know that way, way, way oversimplifies it. But the reaction that I got from people when I cut off my hair was, suddenly women were much more friendly to me. I had conversations with people. People said hi in the grocery store. And men didn't look at me at all anymore.
I had a bit of a different, I don't know if it's a different experience, but I, over the past 2 years, lost about 80 pounds. So I was quite overweight for a good period of time. And I noticed that everybody was nicer to me. I had women being nicer to me. I had men being nicer to me. People opened the doors for me that didn't before. It's sort of your classic, when you think of the fat shaming kind of concept, where people are kind of shut out from society for being a certain weight. I noticed that changed a lot. And I have to say, it made me incredibly uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable because I could very clearly see the difference between how I was treated when I was overweight versus when I was a normal, healthy weight. And I had that from women. I had women being nicer to me and paying more attention. I had my own friends, I feel like, being nicer to me than before. So it was a bit of a different experience. But just walking around in society in general, the doors open more. I joined I play golf now. I've all of a sudden these golf women want to now play with me that hadn't before. I mean, it's things like that. And I'm kind of surprised I'm disclosing this publicly because it's a sensitive topic for me, but I'm just going to be vulnerable about it. And that was my experience. And so I don't know if that's a frenemy type of situation with some of the women, or if that's actually just being nice because physically somebody who's, a healthy weight is more appealing than somebody who's obese, which I was obese at one point.
What an interesting experience. I mean, I think it's so fascinating when we get the opportunity to do those kinds of little experiments. I mean, you didn't do it because you were experimenting, but you got to see the difference between how people respond to you socially in one body versus another body.
Yes. Very clearly.
Well, and I think when I was in undergrad, I was a research fellow in the psych department. My fellowship mentor was her research was on mate selection. That was what her area of interest was. She was really great. I enjoyed working for and with her quite a bit, and I was designing surveys on and where I'd have to go out and select pictures of attractive men, and we were mostly studying women's mate selection at the time. So I was finding pictures of men of different attractiveness levels, and then getting raters to help me confirm where, so we could really like. These are all. There's always going to be arbitrariness and subjectivity in these things, but we were trying to get it to where you really had these. Like a hierarchy of attractiveness. And then we would have these short descriptions, like little bios that we would apply to each that would hit on very specific points, like socioeconomic status, activity level, income, and just little markers that you would want to know to sort of sketch out a little bio of a person. And then we would put them with the different pictures differently and then present them and get people to do our surveys. And so I conducted these really large surveys of people to try to figure out this stuff. But in the process, I also had to do a lot of literature review and read a lot about mate selection. And one of the things that's really interesting is the concept of mate poaching and how we are competitive with in terms of attractiveness and how we treat people based on our own assessment of somebody in our same sex being more attractive than us. And it could be different things. You might be talking about physical attraction. You might be talking about hierarchy, things like that. Depending on whether you're a man or a woman, you might weigh things differently. But I do think that we definitely see a lot of female intra-sexual competition on that level of attractiveness. And it's not only to secure a mate or to poach a mate, but also to maintain a mate. So even after you're in a relationship, you can have that sort of intrasexual competition with other people in order to maintain the connection that you have and the attraction that your mate has to you. So I'm on board with all of that. However, I just don't see this great, trad wife with the marionette strings with Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and Joe Biden and George Soros hovering beneath her as she dictates the direction our population needs to go. I just don't see that long game happening on the female side.
I think it's just too totalizing a model. I mean, I think, again, you could have like a bit of it, but there's just so many other factors in society going on, even with the evolutionary psychology. I mean, I might tend to, I don't poo-poo all of it, but it's like, I tend to maybe a more spiritual take. Like, I don't know, we're also beings that aren't just chimps. We do seem to have capacities like love and sacrifice that don't make sense from some sort of survival, right? So I just can't convince it to who has the energy and the resources and genes are just trying to get going somewhere. It's like, I don't know if I could think genes are entirely driving this ship. I'm not sure. I don't know. But anyone that has a thing that says, well, this is kind of for sure the engine of everything, like I just kind of find myself going, I don't know about that, but I consider it as a cog or an element in it.
What do you think, Jennifer? What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with what Deborah said. I don't think it's this giant, sort of whatever conspiracy. But I keep thinking about the intersexual competition. And I do think, of course, we all have that within us. I think we have that within us with everything because people are resources. So to that extent, you're competing for resources, much in the same way that you're competing for a job, which is a resource. I wonder if I'm horribly naive or something. I really like to see everybody looking great. And when I see that someone doesn't look great, but I think they could, I feel like I want to tweak them. because we're here for such a short time. So I feel like just be fabulous while you're here. And I say this as someone who, like, when I run my errands, I look like a hobo. Like I do go out of the house looking disgusting, but I can pull myself together when I want to. And I like to see people looking wonderful, women and men, and it makes me happy. And I feel like, I mean, unless a woman was like coming on to my man, and I don't care. I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's wonderful. I love seeing people look good and be healthy and fit and wear clothes that flatter them, and hopefully not have a stupid hairstyle. As someone who's been ruined multiple times by ugly hairstyles, I just, yeah, I just enjoy it. And I don't know. You don't have to have, and also I don't have to have every single guy attracted to me. It just takes the one, I just want the one mate. I don't need a harem. So it's like, once you have the one, who cares if other women are getting attention? I don't know. But I might be living in La La Land.
I just wanted to give a weird angle on this, just thinking about my. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I don't know that you're living in La La Land. I mean, even when I was heavy, my husband not once said to me that I had gained weight or that I was unattractive. He was still very attracted to me. I felt that he was very attracted to me, and I felt the commitment was there, and there was never any kind of weird, on my end or his end, I don't think, any kind of feelings of being threatened. And that hasn't changed since I've become a healthy weight. So I can see that, I can agree with what you're talking about, Jennifer. And I think people do, people do want to see others look good. I don't know. I guess it just depends, is what I'm saying, because I didn't experience anything different in my personal relationships the way I did with the external world.
Yeah, interesting.
Deborah, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say I sometimes feel I'm weird on this topic because I had so much ambivalence about the whole looks thing, in that when I was young, I was the geek girl. I had the glasses. No one considered me as someone they would be interested in at all. And so at a very early age, I just said to myself, I guess I better have a good personality. So I didn't even think I was in that competition at all. And yet at the same time, I was afraid, for some historical things, I was afraid of male attention. And I mean, to such an extent, I remember I used to wish, or sort of pray, may I be invisible to any men I don't want to be interested in me, and may only the ones that like I would really want to be connected to and love can even see me and see that I look good. So it's not like I was thinking back to college when I used to work in the dining hall, and sometimes like the skinny girls would come by, and a few of us, we want to serve them like extra food on purpose to like get them fat. So it's not we saw Brooke Shields, because she went to college right in. We saw her steal like an extra bag of cereal before a break, like a spring break or something. And we're like, she's taking cereal. She's going to get fat. So anyway, it's not like I'm below or above whatever, any of these sorts of things. But sometimes I somehow generally thought I had to have a bit of a different currency, even though I was worried I would never really win at the end anyway, because I wasn't sure if anyone else was working in the same currency. But I think I didn't. Yeah, I think my mind hasn't been in that game as much. But again, I'm not above it.
Well, that's interesting, and I think that the thing that I think there's something that separates that level of sabotage, if you want to call it sabotage, if we can go there, like why don't you go ahead and cut your hair, or here, have an extra helping. This is a way of attempting to perhaps equalize a bit. Like, here's somebody who has an advantage. Maybe I can do something that would dull their advantage to give me a leg up. You could make an argument that those are competitive mating strategies, but to take the extra step and say that they are about trying to restrict birth rate is interesting. Because I would say that maybe what you're doing, And I think that it's an important distinction. Like if you're competing for your desired mate or for the access to desirable mates, I don't think that you're necessarily trying to keep the other people from getting mates at all. I think you're trying to change the distribution or your own standing in the distribution. But this goes a step further, and it says that what women are actually at, what the point of those behaviors is to limit the reproduction of other females. And I think that that is a very different thing. I think that there's a substantial difference between I want the better thing and I don't want you to have anything at all. And I don't know if that were to be true, I think we would see a lot more negativity from women towards children and mothers. And I do think that we have seen a shift in priorities with women wanting to work outside of the home, obviously. And there has been a societal push to demonize big families, to push people from having large families to smaller families or no replacement level and so on. I don't see that as being a female driven thing. I'm not saying it's male driven, but I just don't see that being a female driven thing. One of the things that I've talked about a bunch is this, that when I was in college, so this would have been like the mid-aughts, maybe like 2005 to 2008 or something like that. There was so much talk then about population. This was after Al Gore was all over the place with his scare theories about the world and the climate and whatever. And I attended this seminar by an author. Somebody told me the name, and I probably still have the book somewhere. I forgot the guy's name though. About how we could reduce population. And the theory, and this was a man, and this was a male-driven theory. His sources and his collaborators were other male social scientists. Their theory was you go into third world countries and you educate women because then you're going to change women's priorities so that they'll start they'll delay childbirth and they'll value work outside of the home instead of child rearing so that they'll reduce their family sizes. I see plenty of evidence pointing to men in this population control sphere. And I'm not going to deny that there would be women in that sphere as well. I think that there probably are a lot of women. And then we can point at Margaret Sanger. We can point at some of these figures. But I just don't see this particular thing that this Dr. Danny is pointing at. I don't see it. I'm reading some of the comments that people are leaving here. Did you have a thought, Christine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of formulating it, but it just, I guess what pops up for me is this whole idea, in the past, several decades that we should delay having children in order to go have careers as women. And I don't know how much that affects population growth because the older you are as a woman trying to have a baby, the more difficult it becomes and the less likely you are to have a baby that doesn't have some kind of a defect. That's just a scientific fact. So in some ways, is that a population control type of mechanism? I don't know. Maybe that is. But I know that that's something that was very much valued, as I was growing up and going through school and through college. Get the career, stand on your feet, and get to a certain point in your career before you bring kids into the world. Some of it, I guess, is because you want to be financially stable enough to support them. But, there's also that component of maybe that is a way in which we control the population because it does become harder to have kids the older you are as a woman. Men don't have that issue.
Well, and
they don't, although the quality of their sperm does drop.
Right.
So there's also the phenomenon, and she, on this particular interviewee on her socials, she's kind of playing with it. She's kind of laughing about it, the pick me thing. Pick me being kind of like the female version of the male feminist, right? Like I see it your way. Those other guys are bad. You know, the man who would say, yeah, you can't trust men, but you can trust me. And the pick me being the woman who says, women are a bunch of manipulative crazies. I know it. So you can trust me. I'm a representative that you can trust. And I think that's interesting also. I mean, it's a pretty derogatory thing to call someone, but there is that phenomenon of being the cool girl who has a different sort of mate, I guess, mate attraction strategy, which says, I'm not going to get you by being the hottest one, but I'll get you by being the coolest one who helps you to figure out. And in doing that, what I'm going to do is sabotage the other girls. I'm going to whisper things about women that will make you want to avoid them, but I'll draw you closer to me. So that's the sort of pick me strategy. And it's interesting to see how there's such an appetite right now for the man versus woman stuff. The whole, it really struck me hard after the Darlene Lev interview, how angry a lot of online men are at women and how ready they are to blame women for all of the problems. Just a couple of the comments on that video were things like, it was always a wrong thing to give equality to women. Women should follow the leadership of men and stop thinking they are the boss of anyone. What do these richer women do? They invest their enemy into reproductive suppression toward their outgroup. Brilliant. Women are surely evil if not kept under rule. A certain Austrian painter said it best. Women serve society best by respecting their roles, following men, supporting men emotionally, and helping secure our future by making healthy families. Women need to be second-class citizens.
Oh my God.
The kind of society required to prevent this reproductive suppression by women is one in which women aren't allowed to participate in governance at any level outside the home. And on and on and on.
So on that video?
There's just such an appetite right now for that. And when I see that, the thing I think of is the sort of sour grapes, the sour grapes mindset, or it's like I could have been, but the field was not. I could have done great things, except that everybody was set up to fail. So if I hate women and think that they all suck and they're all a bunch of manipulative saboteurs that are just waiting to get me in close so that they can leave me and take me to the cleaners at the divorce lawyer, then that's why I never tried. That's why I walked away from that whole enterprise.
No, there's I think there's definitely a lot of that. Because I went on one of those. What was it? I think it was the men going their own way or something, and they had posted a bunch of photos of actresses that had reached a certain age and then written, splat underneath, and how great it is to see women hit the wall and taking all this, deranged pleasure in ha ha ha, she's losing her looks, as if men are, free from aging. This doesn't happen to them. But just the level of hatred was so astonishing to me. So I think some of those comments are rooted in hatred and a lack of confidence, that they think that they can't get a woman. They don't have the ego strength to tolerate rejection, because to be out there, you are going to hit a certain amount of rejection and you've got to be able to bounce back from it. And same thing with women. Do we always get what we want? No, we don't, like it might be a lot easier for us to get laid, but that doesn't mean that person wants a permanent relationship with us. And maybe that's what we want. So we get rejected. We face that too. But if you want to spend your whole life living in your parents' basement, angry about everything, then you're gonna be flipping miserable. And these guys also only want to date women half the time that look like models or something. So I just, I don't have a lot of sympathy for that type of view of women.
Well, I think there's an awful lot of toxic behavior going around. I mean, we've really experimented on people dramatically by removing a lot of our in-person connection, which is where you pick up on empathy and subtlety and nuance and the awkwardness of being human. And we've moved to these distant and more curated styles of interacting. And people who are in the dating market, who are on dating apps, I know Jennifer, you've had some experience with that recently, and I've done that in the past. I don't know if you, Deborah or Christina, have ever experienced that.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
so
how I met my
dehumanizing.
husband.
Okay, good. So you have a good story.
Yeah.
But it can be very dehumanizing to just swipe people, And you hear this from men. One of the common complaints is that they don't even get if they're shorter than what is 5'10", 6 foot, something like that. They get passed over. If they're not in the top of good-looking guys, they get passed over. And I think it's very similar for women. Women might get somebody who's interested in hooking up with them if they're not the most attractive, but they're not going to get someone who's really interested in a relationship and connecting with them sincerely for love unless they're one of these really stellar profiles, right? So you have so much more human shopping that leaves a lot of people feeling rejected and cynical.
And much greater volume too, right? Like if it was, you had to organically meet people and then maybe you got rejected. Here, there's like hundreds a day that you could potentially be rejected by or right? Like it's just the sheer volume available on the phone is just so much different than anything you would encounter in life.
Oh, Jay Bourne, sounds crazy, but my biggest fear would be going from arguing against feminism to arguing against Sharia law. Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. Because that's the pendulum swing, right? That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the thing that I would argue for is something that's a more moderate perspective. Like, men are not all represented by the worst of men. The worst qualities 100%. Of men.
100%.
And women are not all represented by the worst qualities of women. And feeding into this kind of rage cycle doesn't help anybody.
No, and it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you find a mate. Just be the best person you can be and, select somebody, though I would say, try to select somebody that's on your level. If you're a guy and you're, 80 pounds overweight, but you're rejecting everybody on the app that's overweight, then that's kind of ridiculous, So be what it is you want to attract. You want somebody with their act together. You want somebody who cares about their health and fitness, then be that person. If not, then date somebody who's on your level with that,
Yeah. And what's the female equivalent of that?
That's tricky too, because don't women kind of want to go up a status level, whatever we're measuring status as, right? Like, is that sort of been said that's sort of the mating strategy of women? So
women have always done that. Women marry across and up, economically speaking. And I think that has to do with the fact that we're typically the ones who assume all the physical and financial risk by bearing children. So I think in that case, it makes absolute sense to be that way, and I don't see anything wrong with it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's something I've had a few comments requesting that we talk about that concept of hypergamy, where women want to marry someone above their own socioeconomic bracket. And yeah, I do agree, Jennifer. It's not usually just above, but it's across and above. You won't usually see women who will desire to marry down a notch socioeconomically, although many do when they fall in love with someone. But
yeah, I mean, I have in the past, and But I think, I wasn't highly motivated by the idea of having kids either at the time that I made that decision. But I think, let's say I was a school teacher and I really, really wanted to have the option of staying home for a few years with my kids. I would not necessarily want to marry another school teacher. Now, if I was a millionaire and I fell in love with a school teacher, sure, I'd do it because I don't care whose money it is, but I care that it's there. So, and you never know either if your kid's going to be sickly or have special needs, and you're going to need to take a lot of time off work. You've got to have somebody who's really able to sort of provide for that. I think for me, that's how I look at it.
All right. Indy Meon 766 says, when men date our level, we get accused of exploiting easy targets, and that if she even accepts us, which she often does not, the rejection is pretty much 99% going one way. What do you mean by date? Do you mean like hookup, or do you mean court for marriage? I'm curious about the context there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Let's see. PGRO says, women do not assume all the financial risk. All Western countries have mandatory involuntary child support requirements for fathers.
Yes, and those requirements,
you know what? As somebody,
those requirements are income based, and there's guys that only pay $300 a month for friggin' child support. Oh, that's all you can afford? No one's saying to the woman, oh wow, you can't afford this or that or the other. You still have to provide all the rest. So no, no.
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of. My ex-husband owes me $90,000 in child support that I'll never ever get.
You'll never see it.
No, he just never paid it at all. Just never ever paid it, and at the end of the day, you can do what you do to dodge. There's hard stories on both sides. You're going to hear women with hard stories like that one, where I still raised my kids. I was their only provider. It was just me. I loved my kids, and I had a duty to them regardless of whether I was getting child support. And his ability to dodge that, ultimately, it was easier for him to dodge that than it would have been for me to give up on my children. So there's stories like that, and then there's stories
they're also much more likely to dodge the kids themselves than the women are.
Well, and he did that too.
Seldom hear about that.
Yeah, he did that too.
So,
but then I know that for every story like that, you're going to have somebody who can counter with a story of a guy who got this really, really raw deal. I knew a family that the guy was. He had sexually molested his child. This was a 3-year-old kid, and it was proven. It was medically proven, and the mother was she was forced to pay him child support because he had not worked during their marriage, and so spousal support. She was required to provide him with child support, and he was able to he did a little supervised visitation, and then he was able to get the supervision removed, so he had full visitation with the child. So there are stories if people want to trade them. I know it's very popular right now for men to be talking about how awful family courts are for men. I think they're awful for a lot of people, men and women, because it sucks when you get an administrative process involved with the most intimate parts of people's lives that are the most important thing in the world to them. And it's heartbreaking what you hear from both men and from women. So Jay Bourne, so much to say and only 7 minutes left. I know. I know.
Like what, Jay? Jay, what would you want to say?
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, area hermit woman. My abusive dad worked under the table to avoid paying. Yeah, that's really popular.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. Is people find all these loopholes and leave women in poverty, and we are so attached to our kids that we're not going to be the ones to walk away, and so we really are assuming a larger risk. I'm not saying it's risk-free for men. It is 100% not, and they should also be very careful who they breed with. But it just does pose a greater risk for women.
Yeah,
And you can
97
you
says.
you can have permanent health and physical changes too from having kids. I
Yes.
mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
also
Yes.
not talked about. All the complications with pregnancy, people act like it's the easiest thing in the world now. I know so many healthy, super fit, conscientious women that have all kinds of pregnancy complications that still have ongoing, lasting physical problems. Um, it's huge. It's just a huge undertaking, and I don't think society honors it enough.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, Jen, you're making the case because I
Sorry
was
for
thinking
the
about
rant.
I was thinking about this morning, like, because we were like, oh my God, everything has gone off the rails. You have people that say we should just go back to pre 19th Amendment, whatever. And it kind of seems to me like I think we needed maybe not as many years as it's gone and then as off the rails as it's gone. But if we didn't have women getting their own capacities to be able to take care of children if they have to, in case they're, the male abandons or something, like I feel like there was some things that we as women needed to develop. Now, the fact that we've gone so far as to be like, we just don't need men at all, or we're going to have babies like in surrogates, like that has gone too far. But I don't think I'd want a world where women couldn't manage themselves, especially if they were in an abusive relationship. I mean, it used to be that you would just have to stay. If there was no way to make an income, women would have to stay in these horrible circumstances. So I think I'm glad that we somehow could vote, could go out and get careers, are able to educate ourselves and do all these different things. I think it was to me, a lot of it was the devaluation of motherhood and having children. Like that's part of the the problem was sort of like, ooh, you're going to be a mother. And I think if that had kept, if feminism was considered what's good for women, including being a mom, having the support to be a mom and all that, along with if you want to do this other career, whatever, right? And also letting people know things like, your fertility is going to go down very fast after you hit your late 20s, so you maybe want to have that kid sooner. Like there should have been more, I think, education about these 100%. Circumstances. That's my rant.
No, I agree 100%. I'm on board 100%. It is so devalued to choose being a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mother than it is to have a career and bring home, a certain income, plus raise the family, plus take care of the husband. And I don't know, the feminist movement made it so that it was more impossible to be a woman than actually, helpful in opening doors. I mean, it opens doors, sure, for wanting a career, but at the devaluation of being a parent and a mother. And that's something that I would have loved to have done. It just didn't happen at the right time in my life, but I would have loved to have done that. It's just, I think I was pumped full of those messages myself. And now that I'm older, looking back, 2020, vision or whatever, I can see that that's not something that I would have chosen today.
Well, and there's definitely, I think, to come full circle to the prompt of whether there's reproductive suppression going on. I think that we definitely are dealing with reproductive suppression and artificial manipulation of our population. I think that we can see it clearly in some of the UNESCO policies for education that promote non-reproductive sexuality. Like we're promoting sex for recreation like crazy, especially homosexual and other non-procreative sex. That's what UNESCO's policies for comprehensive sex education for children are all about. We promote the delay of motherhood for women that, like you said, it comes down to less ability, less time to have children, and less ability for a lot of people to conceive and carry a healthy pregnancy. And so we hit a point where the powers that be decided that we were too many and that it was going in a dangerous direction and we needed to reduce the number of people being born. This has been all the talk for my entire life and before. Our entire lives, we've been hearing this thing about population control, and you see what happened in China, and how do we do it here? And is there a gentler way to do it? And so the gentler way to do it was to convince us not to value family and children the same way, not to value being a mom, and for women not to value men, and for men not to value women. And so we spent a lot of time with women getting indoctrinated about the very worst things that men are and to scare us to death of men. And there's plenty of evidence to be scary, because there's plenty of horrible things that men do to women. And so we spend a lot of time with that propaganda to make women feel afraid and then charged up with their own, defensive, I don't need a man kind of energy. And now you have a whole bunch of energy pumping out there, people's algorithms churning up anti-woman propaganda for men to look at. The worst of women, the most judgy and superficial and flaky and greedy and all hoey kind of crap, in order to convince men to hate women. And if we let it work, then we're just playing right into what they're doing. Women and men are about a whole lot more than that crap. And we have to value each other. And yeah, Jay Bourne, it's a very strategic attack on life, which obviously involves separating men and women. I think that's the best way to say it right
Interesting.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yep. All right, guys. Any final thoughts? We're at the hour.
No, good topic. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. If you guys want to get into it again in the future, this is perennial.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what Jenny has to say about it too. So I hope she can weigh in. There's always more to say. Thank you all for joining us in the chat today. And yeah, let's keep the discussion going. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.